Sounds
Hi,
good.
everybody, and welcome to another installment of Mindful Marathon Conversations. I am Dr. Michelle Quirk. I am a pediatrician, a run coach, and founder of Mindful Marathon, where I help make running easy and fun for busy professionals. And today I have with me a very special guest. I have Dr. Lynn Stiff here. She is a board certified family medicine and lifestyle medicine physician, a registered dietitian, a long distance runner, a podcaster, and founder of Nutrition Health Life. Welcome, Dr. Lynn.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I like my little tagline, I guess, is I'm a dietitian turned physician who's passionate about empowering people to take charge of their health and make realistic and sustainable behavior changes. As you mentioned in the intro, kind of covered most of the high points. I'm also a mom of 3 young children and a wife, and I live in Colorado, and I am an avid outdoors person as well. So trail running is kind of part of that distance running piece as well.
I love it. Now, tell us how you're a little bit about your running journey, how running has fit into your life over the years.
Oh, sure. And it's evolved so much. I'm very type A, kind of perfectionistic. And one of my other taglines is that I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Me too.
So I'm really working on it. But so it seems like I actually started running in high school. A senior in high school, I had some friends on cross country. So I just joined for fun. I was not any good. I think I got third place in a JV match as a senior in high school. So, so that was my highlight of my running career. And then I would just run casually, but it was probably in 2009 I started diving into distance running. It was one of those things like once you get past 3 miles, you kind of start to get the runner's high and you realize how awesome it is. So that was during grad school. I started doing distance running, and I ran a half marathon and was hooked, went to a full marathon and said I would never do that again. And then a week later was like, what marathon should I sign up for next? And then just over the year, I didn't end up actually doing another marathon after that one, but continued to have ebbs and flows of distance running, and then had 3 children. So that also continued the ebbs and flows. But running was the thing I always kind of turned to for stress relief, whether it was just a few miles or a longer run. And my youngest is 3, so since she was born, I've been able to really build up my speed and my distance, and so now I'm on my path to hopefully qualify for Boston in September. We'll see.
I'm so
So
excited about that
yeah,
for
so
you.
that'll be my next marathon, which is actually the same course that I ran 11 years ago. So it'll be
Oh,
fun to see how much better I do. So
oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
And yeah, I know. I'm rooting for you all the way. I feel like I'm a part of
thank you.
the journey a little bit. I'm also living vicariously through you because I'm a lot slower.
It's been crazy since my last. I When I started running after she was born, I had no endurance. It was I had all 3 kids during training, so during medical school and residency, and so my third year of residency was when I had my third kid, and I had no time, so I just really didn't run much at all, more than a mile if I did.
Mhm.
And so when I started, it was like starting from scratch, and I had a real appreciation for that, like how hard it is when you first get going, because it takes about a month to really kind of get used to running again. And but I ran with my new dog. She was maybe 9 months old then, and she was so fast. She still is so fast. And so I actually attribute my newfound speed to her. So yeah, it's kind of crazy that I would have never guessed that I could qualify for Boston unless I was 60 or something. And so so yeah, I'm really excited that it's a possibility now.
Yeah, yeah, and I am excited for you.
Thank you.
So we wanted to talk today a little bit about how to up level your running. And so you practice lifestyle medicine, and Dr. Lynn has a great website and a lot of really informative blog pieces over there. And she wrote one recently on how to up level your running with the pillars of lifestyle medicine. So I wanted to have her on to talk about that a little bit and delve into the pillars, and maybe start with what lifestyle medicine is, and take us through.
Sure. Yeah. So lifestyle medicine's a newer specialty in medicine. They just recently started having board certification. And basically, it looks at the whole picture for health, because somewhere between 60 to 80% of chronic disease is attributed to diet and lifestyle choices. And so you may have genes that predispose you but that doesn't mean it's inevitable that you'll have that condition. There are a few conditions. That's why this isn't 100% diet and lifestyle. But so there are some conditions you'll just get, that's just in the cards. But many things, it's sort of like the stage is set. But if your diet and lifestyle is optimized, you may not get that condition, or you may hold it off for another 10 or 20 years. And so lifestyle medicine looks at multiple areas of health and how we can address those areas to optimize overall health and prevent chronic disease.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, yeah, there are 6 pillars: nutrition, physical activity, mental, emotional health, avoiding risky substances, personal connectedness and positive psychology, and then sleep. I don't know why I always forget sleep, but that's a very important one. I'm always like, what's that last one? And sleep. So yeah, there are 6 pillars, and the idea is that we have to address all 6 if we really want to optimize health. So like if your sleep isn't optimal, it's going to be hard for you to follow a healthy diet. It's going to be hard for you to manage your mental, emotional health, etc. So it's this idea that we can look at these areas and take small steps in each area to try to optimize our health, and then hopefully prevent disease overall.
Yeah. No, I love that. And really small steps consistently is sort of one of my mantras. So
Mm-hmm.
all of these things play into running and how we go about it. And I know, for me and for a lot of runners, we put a lot of focus on the training plan, but there's more to running than just following the training plan. So how can we use some of the pillars? I mean, I feel like I love to sleep. I love sleep. So, I mean, we could start with sleep, but how do the pillars kind of play into our running and really running our best?
Yeah, and I think you said you'd link this in the show notes, but the blog post goes into detail specifically kind of related to running and how to address this for each pillar in the setting of running. But really, this is also just general health. So even the non-runners or walkers or anyone else out there. But yeah, so for sleep, the big thing is trying to make sure we get somewhere between 7.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep. There are a few people out there who maybe only need 6 hours of sleep, but that's in the minority. And there is so much data around lack of sleep and negative health outcomes, whether it's increased mood disorders, increased fatigue throughout the day, and accidents related to that. Also just mental, emotional health. Sorry, that's with mood disorders. And then also with eating. So there's a lot of data that when we're sleep deprived, we tend to crave, sugary, fatty foods to try to help us stay awake and give us energy. And then it also makes it harder for us to lose weight if we are someone who is sleep deprived. And so our optimal health is at this setting where we're getting enough sleep so our metabolism can be regulated and we have more control over what our decisions are. We all know what it's like to be sleep deprived and you're like, I'm just hungry. I just need to eat something.
Yeah.
And you feel like you have no self-control, and that can obviously be really frustrating. So trying to focus on your bedtime routine, because sometimes we lay in bed for 8 hours, but we don't actually sleep restfully. And so the blog goes over some big key points on how we can optimize our sleep routine so that hopefully when we are in bed, it's the most restful amount of time it can be, because we all have limited time. We can't be, laying in bed for 10 hours to get our 8 hours of sleep because we wake up every few hours. And one big one with sleep is alcohol that I think people don't realize. And so having alcohol before bed actually can lead to less restful and restorative sleep. And so some people say, I'm so tired, I'm stressed, I need alcohol to unwind. And they think like, I'm running, I'm burning all these calories, so I can have alcohol, it's no big deal. But the alcohol is actually going to make it harder for you to get restful sleep. So trying not to have that right before bed.
Yeah. No, as you were talking about this, I was having some flashbacks to residency and thinking like this was a time where obviously we were very sleep deprived, and I was definitely not eating very well, not sleeping enough, not exercising. Like that may have been a part of my life when I was not. I certainly wasn't doing everything I should have done to really optimize my health. And here I was, a resident and trying to tell that to everybody else anyway.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it happens. I mean, and I work at a residency. And so like one of our focuses is on wellness and trying to figure out how we can shift this, but it's challenging with the demanding work balance. How do we make it so that you're getting the training you need, but then also getting the self-care and wellness piece that you need. So it's a really hard balance sometimes.
Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
with your background as a dietitian first, before you became a physician, how does the nutrition piece play in? I know a lot of people talk about running for weight loss. And I
Mhm.
know I have a question on my questionnaire for my new athletes. What is your why? We always talk about finding your motivation to run. And sometimes people will say to lose weight. But I know you put a very important focus on running for health, as do I. And so maybe we can delve into that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, our bodies, as you know very well, are these very well trained things that have evolved over years for survival. And so when we try to alter their function by restricting calories, whether eating less than we need or exercising a lot, our bodies adapt. They're very smart. Like their goal is to not lose weight. And so obviously there are situations where people desire to lose weight and they do this in a very conscientious way. But I think that the bigger focus should be on how we can focus on health, because that's a more controllable piece. No one can guarantee that they're going to lose 10 pounds and keep it off forever because, again, our bodies adapt and your metabolism changes. And we've all been in that place where if you don't eat enough, you're so starving and then you end up overeating. So, like, our bodies put in these mechanisms to try to prevent us from not getting what we need. And
Yeah.
so focusing on health, we don't have to worry about what the number on the scale says, but instead we can focus more on how we feel. Yes. and so, and so it's nice to be able to like just take the scale piece away because there's a lot of negative experiences, especially with women around weight. And that scale is super stressful. Like, I don't know how many women we're in some mutual Facebook groups, but how many women talk about how they're doing so great. They feel so great, the best they've ever felt, but then they're frustrated that this number hasn't changed. And the point is that number doesn't matter because the number doesn't take into account anything that you're actually doing, because your body. We can't just guarantee someone is going to weigh a certain number. It's just too complicated. And so when focusing on health instead, we can still improve health outcomes. There are studies that show physical fitness is an independent marker for cardiovascular disease, and also diabetes and cancer prevention. And so just trying to focus on that piece, that how we feel mental, emotional health wise, and then also improving our cardiovascular endurance and strength can have huge impacts in our health down the road.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love to tell my athletes that I've run at a weight that was 10 pounds lighter than I am now and 10 pounds heavier. And I was a runner at all of
Mhm.
those. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, it doesn't matter. But it's really hard to detach yourself from the numbers
Mhm.
on the scale for a lot,
Yeah.
a lot of us.
Especially, I mean, it's been ingrained in us forever. And it seems like there's a shift starting that's more like fit over thin kind of thing, like trying to be healthful and in shape. Sorry, I have kids trying to come in the room.
Oh, it's
But
fine.
healthful and in shape as opposed to focusing just on how you look on the outside. And so, yeah, I think that's awesome that this shift is happening, but it's really hard for people who have grown up. Like, so it's great for kids now, like hopefully they'll grow up with that mindset. But for
Yeah.
all of us, that it takes a lot of time to shift that perspective.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
mean, as a pediatrician, and you see kids as well in your practice, but
Mhm.
I always tell them, it's not really about the number. I very rarely ever say the number. It's often the parents who want to know, how much
Mhm.
does the child weigh? What's their BMI and all the numbers? And I say, it's not about the number or a pant size or anything like that. Like, we're trying to be fit and strong and build good habits now
Mhm.
and find things that you really love to do for exercise so that
Mhm.
it's easier to make these habits when you're young and you just take them with you
Mhm.
forever.
And
It's
just like
harder
how
harder
much
to
better
change
is
it.
life when you're focusing on this, right? Like, sure,
Yes.
you could starve yourself and lose a bunch of weight, but you're going to feel horrible all the time. Versus how are you going to feel after you can, like you can run a 5K and you can play with your kids or your nieces and nephews and you
Mhm.
can, go for a bike ride downtown to go to some festival that's happening. All these things where you can like fully engage in life because you have
Yes.
physical fitness.
Yes.
And then later in life, when you're, 60, 70, 80, 90, being able to not have to worry about, or less or so like fractures and falls and all these things that start to happen as we lose muscle mass. And so, yeah, I think there are so many benefits to focusing on the behaviors that we are participating in as opposed to what a number says.
Yeah, yeah. I love that focus on functional fitness, really. Like that
Mhm.
your fitness isn't a limiter and you can do all the things that you want to do.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with how much you weigh.
Yeah. And also, I think we've talked about this before, as you start to fall in love with running and you want to go further or faster, like you're going to be hungrier. And
Yes.
if you don't fuel that, you're going to
Oh,
have injuries or just kind of tank. You're not going to be able to keep up with your training. And so that's another piece. If someone was really focusing on weight loss, they probably wouldn't be able to run more than 3 miles, because once you really get past that point, like you need more nourishment to fuel your activity. And so I try to focus on, like, think of how good you feel right now. If you want to keep feeling that good and like, be able to run 10 miles one day, like we're going to need to fuel properly. And it's always so hard to hear people when they're training for half and full marathons or longer distances, when they are so concerned about like taking the gel during the race. I'm like, your body's burning all these calories. It needs this. Like, this is the fuel that will help you sustain the run. But people have such an aversion towards, sugar, especially, that
yeah.
they're kind of hesitant to fuel properly. And so I think your shift really needs to be on the performance, where you're like, oh yeah, of course I need sugar for my muscles to work so I can do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
A lot of runners get scared almost about the fact that they are hungrier as they get into longer distances. It's like it's fine until we hit a certain point, and then people feel like they're hungry all the time. But
Mhm.
you have to, yeah, you have to feel that. You shouldn't ignore that. But
Mhm.
that is another hard shift to make.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Any, last thoughts that you'd like to leave us with about running or how to bring in the pillars of lifestyle medicine before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I'll touch on, so I'll quickly mention the other pillars.
Oh yeah, please.
Um, in the blog post again, we'll go into more detail, but the other piece that's mentioned about physical activity in the pillars is not just running. So a lot of times runners are like just runners.
Oh
There
yes.
obviously are some triathletes and things too, but there's more to fitness than just cardiovascular fitness. So there's also mobility and strength training. And
Mhm.
so trying to have that variety in your training plan. So like cross training if you can, so you're not just running, which I'm sure you talk to your clients about
Yeah,
often.
yeah.
And then also adding in the strength and the mobility piece, because you use your muscles differently when you're strength training than when you're running. And I've been really amazed at doing in very specific running strength training, how
Mhm.
that can improve my form and actually help my running overall, more so than just like making me stronger. It actually changes how my body is working while I'm running.
Yeah.
And so I think making sure to touch on that. The mental emotional health pillar, this one is super important, because I'm sure we've all had times in our lives when we're super stressed, like you mentioned with residency,
Yeah.
where you're like, I love running and it's my stress relief, but like, why is my running not going well? And like suddenly, like it's going so great, it's your stress relief. And then suddenly it's just all these like bad running days where you're like, gosh, I don't like this. I feel sluggish and I'm just like not performing like I should. And oftentimes we don't think about how mental stress also can manifest that way. So like if we're not getting enough sleep or we're having a lot of stress in our lives, sometimes we just need to take a break. And if we push through too much with running, like we end up overdoing it and we can get injured. So sometimes that combination of the stress from running and the mental stress, we just need to take a step back and give ourselves a few rest days,
Yeah.
which I think also can be really hard for runners. I know I started working with a running coach at the start of the year, and she's like, "You have to take a rest day, Lynn." I was like, "Do I really? Like, I can
Yeah.
just do an easy Peloton ride." And she's like, "No, you can do yoga,
Yes.
gentle yoga."
Yes.
So,
Yes.
not hot yoga or anything crazy. So, but yeah, so that your body obviously needs rest. And sometimes we think of our bodies as this like endless machine that we can just push through. But sometimes the stress of running or the stress of life just is trying to give us a sign, like you need to just take a step back and be more mindful. So I'm sure you talk about this, more mindful of how
Yeah.
your body's responding, and respond to that. Don't just ignore it.
Yeah, no, I love that. You would love my physical therapist, Dan. He always says runners like to run, or they
Yes.
only like to run. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to cross train or do
Mhm.
strength training. It helps if the strength training is specific to running, but
Mhm.
most runners just want to run. But
Yes.
that is not the way to optimize your running
Mhm. Yeah, because it's funny, it just is ingrained in us. I'm still struggling with this whole like running slower than, because I used to just go out and run, and I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
realize I should run slower than I was.
yeah.
But yeah, I think as runners, we think we need to run really fast all the time, every
Hmm.
day. And
Yeah,
if we don't, then we're gonna get worse. Like, like we'll lose our fitness. And so
yeah,
it's hard to like cut that. And I think that's why coaches are so helpful, because they hold you accountable and they're like, no, you're going to do this. Just trust me. It's going to be okay. And then it is okay. But it's like some other, third party voice telling you like you need to just take this break or do this other activity. And it definitely pays off, but it can be hard to do on your own.
yeah, for sure. I think during the pandemic, I was running just on my own without really a training plan from my coach. And I noticed that weeks would go by and then things would start to be sore. And I would think, did I take a rest day? Because between cycling and strength training and running, I would just go about my business every day. And
Mm-hmm.
this is great that I became on almost like autopilot doing all of that. But then something would get sore and I'd think, well, I really haven't taken a rest if I think about it, which
Mm-hmm.
is not good.
Yeah, and it's hard to fit it all in too when you're trying to improve your performance.
Yeah.
Because I know like I need to fit strength training on my harder run days. Like I try to do
Yes.
a harder run and then strength after, so that my rest day can be more restful.
Yes.
But it's so hard to like do a second workout when I'm like, well, I could just do it tomorrow on my day off.
I
But then
know it.
like I don't get a day off if I do that. So yeah, it can be really tricky to fit it all in.
Yes, for sure. This experience
Mhm.
sounds very familiar.
Yes.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much. This was great. Please tell us where we can find you. I'll definitely leave the blog post and all of your links here in the notes.
Yeah, definitely. So my Instagram account, I'm kind of hit or miss with how often I'm on social media, but you can definitely follow me so you catch anything if I am posting. But it's nutrition.health.life. And my blog is nutritionhealthlife.com. And then I have a podcast called Medicine for Life. And that's probably the number one place you'll find information. That's where I've kind of spent most of my time recently. So if you want to go over, I think I have close to 30 episodes you can listen to on different areas of health and well-being. And so, yeah, if you can, that's on all the major podcast platforms. So you can check that out, and please rate it if you do like it. So,
Yeah, no, it's great.
yeah,
It's a great podcast and it has lots of very helpful information. So definitely check that
yeah,
out.
thank you.
And yeah, if you are a newer runner or a runner who hasn't run in a while, I would love to help you get back into the sport or start in the sport. Beginners are welcome. And you can schedule a call with me. Check it out on the website. I'll leave my links below as well. All right. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Lynn,
Yeah, thank
for your
you.
time. It was great.